Welcome to another episode of The Unseen Paranormal, where some of the scariest things are unseen. I'm your host, Eric Freeman. Today we're talking to Amy Petulla. She is the co-author of Haunted Chattanooga, author of the Corpsewood Manor Murders in North Georgia. She's also the owner and researcher for Chattanooga Ghost Tours. How are you doing today, Amy?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So how did you get into the paranormal and come to start the Chattanooga Ghost Tours?
A little differently than a lot of ghost tour owners, I guess. You know, I had practiced law for 20 years and really didn't have anything at all to do with paranormal, but my kids and I always loved taking ghost tours wherever we went. I think it's a great way to find out about the history of a city, in a fun kind of way that even the kids like. So when I decided to retire, from practicing law, my kids and I had always asked ourselves, how come Chattanooga doesn't have a ghost tour because we're such a tourist city? So I decided to do some research and see if we have enough to make it worth people's while. Turns out Chattanooga has an abundance of ghosts. So I said, well, if no one else is going to do it, I will.
Awesome. What made you interested in writing a book about haunted Chattanooga? Because that's kind of it's one thing to do a tour. It's another thing to become an author.
Right. Well, I always wanted to write. I've written some articles before, but I really never knew how you went about writing a book. And then History Press came to me and they said, hey, would you like to co-author a book for us about haunted Chattanooga? And I was like, this is awesome. I don't have to do all the hard work of finding a publisher or whatever. I've got one built in. So that's how I wrote the first book. Then a few years later, I was kind of working on the other one, and History Press called me again and said, do you want to write another book for us? And I said, well, I'm working on one right now, but it's a true crime. You guys don't do true crime. And they said, oh, we have a whole division for true crime. So that's how that came about.
Your interest in the paranormal, did that start with personal paranormal experiences that you had throughout your life?
My interest in the paranormal is just because I enjoyed taking ghost tours. There are some people that attract a lot of things, and some people don't. And I don't, which I really don't think is fair because I own it. But I will tell you, I did have one encounter when I was researching the Haunted Chattanooga book, where I got to experience something with my own eyes. I was doing some research for the Raccoon Caverns book. Actually, I think this was right before. This is why I included them in the book. They had called me up and they said, hey, we know you own the ghost tours. We have some really cool equipment. We want to just take you on a personal ghost hunt through the caverns. And I thought, well, that would be cool. They said they had this piece of equipment that talked. And I thought, yeah, that's just some gimmick rigged up to spit out random words and intervals. But I said, sure, sounds like fun. Well, when we were down there, besides having incredible responses from the equipment that was like totally appropriate answers to questions, that's what convinced me to start the ghost hunt portion of our thing. We also had been down about 200 feet underground in part of the cave. And we'd said, well, or somebody in the group, not me, had said, well, let's all turn our flashlights off, because the electricity wasn't on down there. We were doing totally by flashlight. So we did. And so, you're 200 feet underground. It is totally black. You don't see anything.
Right.
Except then there was this one girl. They said, oh, she has a lot of Cherokee blood. If anything's going to happen, it's going to happen to her. And I see this faint glow that got brighter and then started kind of pulsing right behind her. And I thought somebody just turned the flashlight on. I said, who's got their flashlight on? I thought somebody was just messing around. And they were like, what are you talking about? I was like, that light. Don't you see that light? Well, then everybody except for her turned and I didn't say where it was, but they saw it because it got brighter. And then about that same time, she still didn't know what we were talking about, but she jumped and said that she had just felt something that had touched her, and she points to her shoulder right where the light had been glowing. Now, maybe there's some kind of weird floating, glowing cave gas that I've never heard of, but otherwise, you just don't get light 200 feet underground.
Right.
So I said, okay, that was definitely something.
What are some of the weirdest histories and stories that you've heard when you were researching the book, Haunted Chattanooga?
Well, of course, it's all kind of weird. It depends on what your perspective of what weird is.
Right.
It's all about it's all about ghosts and whatnot. Since I'm kind of into that stuff, I don't know if I would call any of it really weird, because it's all sort of cool to me. But I love the history, and so I learned a lot about Chattanooga at the time. But there was one thing that was kind of off the beaten path of what I was researching because it wasn't ghosts. But yeah, it was one that I thought was really probably the weirdest thing. I did a lot of research in newspaper accounts. That's for both the tour and for the book. I didn't want to. We're not one of those tours that just makes stuff up.
Right.
Ours is all pretty well researched. So I had gone through what the library had, but at the time, the local history museum was still in existence in Chattanooga, and they had let me go through some archives that they had. Well, they had this newspaper article that was probably about 100 years old at the time, and it talked about this apparently Loch Ness monster type creature that Chattanooga had, and it was talking about, and there was more than one article. It was all these like 32 witnesses who had all seen this monster, and they made a really big deal out of the fact, including the judge's father. So I guess that gave him extra credibility, since the judge is dead. But it was just, it was so just kind of off the wall and not something that you would be expecting. So that's one of the ones I included that one in my book, because on the carousel there at Coolidge Park, which is all hand carved animals, from the carving school here in Chattanooga, they have a sea monster. So I thought, well, that just kind of ties in pretty well with that. That was probably the most bizarre of the things that that I found. So. But
Yeah.
There's plenty of weirdness. I love too that my kids' school, turned out to have, several ghost stories associated with it. So I was really tickled about getting to include that. And in the office, there was like one secretary who was, older, and she had this really, really old history of the school that they had, and it had all kinds of fascinating tidbits about it. When I first wrote that story, it was like probably 3 times as long as it should have been, just because there was so much cool stuff about, like, when Bob Hope played there and when they brought an elephant into the cafeteria, and but that's not really supernatural. It was just weird and interesting to me.
Right. And there's some well-known places around Chattanooga that are pretty haunted. The Reed House is one of them that is, pretty famous, and then South Pittsburgh Hospital has kind of gotten some fame over the past few years, especially with some of the paranormal television shows going there. And
yeah, my co-author wrote the story on South Pittsburgh Hospital. She had really wanted to do that one. Yeah, that's definitely a haunted place. But I've been to South Pittsburgh a couple of times, and there are some things that are not as nice as ghosts, I think, that are also at that hospital. So I really haven't gone there a whole lot. It makes me a little uncomfortable. But yeah, the Reed House is definitely Chattanooga's most famous ghost, and through the years, besides just what all we found in the research, besides our tour, we have ghost hunts. We have our main one is UTC's campus and Citizen Cemetery, but we used to do one when I had a different guide, Hope, with us. We did a downtown ghost hunt too, and that included, we did it from outside the Reed House. The ghost hunts were all entirely outside. But I know that on one of her hunts, she had a family, and the husband was skeptical. I love the skeptics. The ones who either they start out talking about how skeptical they are, and then by the end of the tour or the hunt or whatever, they're not such skeptics, or the ones who tell you, I don't believe in ghosts, but, and then they go on and they tell you their ghost story.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, but these folks, it was, the husband was one of those, and she was using the obelisk, the piece that talks, when it started giving them directions. It was like, stop, turn around, go back, look up. And here at one of the windows in the Reed House, the thing after it said look up, it said light, and a light came on in that window. And then they see this figure like floating in front of the window. This was like off the ground, there was space underneath the figure, where there was nothing.
Yeah.
So that one, that was, my guides tell me about different things that happen on their tours and hunts, and that was one of the coolest things. And it went on for a while. It kept saying, some things that were going to happen, and then it said bye or something like that, and it went away. So it was one of those things that either is going to make you a believer or it's going to make you say, you've rigged up some kind of gimmick to be able to do that, which of course we don't do that. I don't know of any gimmicks that can do that kind of thing.
Right.
But that was really cool. So.
For the book, what was your favorite place to write about the history and the haunting?
Well, like I said, I really liked writing about Chattanooga High School, which has been in several different locations, but all of them have been had ghosts of some sort or another. I like that one just because of the personal connection there. But I really enjoyed doing the one at Hales Bar, which is the first story in my book. I'd heard Hales Bar was supposed to be haunted before. I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but the folks there was a paranormal group called Pros, and they're the ones who originally had run the ghost hunts out at Hales Bar. And they met with me and they were giving me stories about different haunted places around Chattanooga. And they said, hey, why don't you come on out? We'll just take you on a private ghost, like a little mini investigation kind of through Hales Bar. And we had, some really, really bizarre things happen. One of my favorites was we were up in this room and I don't think I found out what the story was about the room until after this, but apparently what was supposed to have happened was a man had pushed a woman who I think was maybe his wife, and she was seeing somebody else, or it was his girlfriend, she was married to somebody else, something like that, pushed her out the window, out of this like third floor window. But I didn't know that when this was happening we were using K2 meters, which they'll light up, and it goes kind of across a spectrum. For any of your listeners who don't know, it starts out like green and then across yellow and then to red, so it'll kind of go back and forth, and you can see the signal strength. If it goes all the way to red, it's a really strong signal.
Right.
Well, we had 2 K2 meters at the time, and looking at the meters, it looked just like a visual depiction of an argument. You could see it going like da 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 da. That was really really interesting. There's a lot of history about that one. That one also, they had told me about a man there who had been seen several times, and he would sometimes follow some of their tour groups, which is always a little creepy. You don't ever know if something's really, good or not when that's going on. But he's dressed in old, like 30s or 40s clothing. And anyway, I'd been home one day, and my ex-husband had said, hey, they're talking about, Hell's Bar, about the ghosts there on the, or about it being haunted on the radio. So I went and listened a little bit. When the guy's sitting there and he's talking about it, so I'd called in, and he suddenly starts talking about this figure that he'd seen or whatever, and he described it wearing 30s and 40s clothing out there, and he really wasn't a believer. The radio announcer wasn't, so and I told him, well, there was this figure that I'd already heard of, they'd already told me about, that followed him around, and I got the Hales Bar people to send me a picture, I think, and we sent it on to him, and he was like, that's exactly who I saw. So that was pretty cool.
And y'all do a bunch of different tours with your Chattanooga Ghost Tours. It's not just the haunted history. You also do some history tours and murder and mayhem.
Yeah. Right now with the COVID thing going on, we've had to cut the size of our tours basically in half, and some of my guides are out because they have high risk kids and can't take the chance of doing tours right now. So we're only able to offer like one tour and one hunt right now, but typically we have several different tours and hunts, like besides our murder and mayhem tour, which is our best tour. We've won lots of awards with that one. We're also running our UTC cemetery ghost hunt right now. Those are the 2 that we're running, but we also have like a choo-choo route tour and our original tour. For a while, when there was a trolley in town, we paired up with them, and we did, in the wintertime when it was cold, people didn't want to walk around, we did a little trolley tour with them. They went out of business, and well, it was I guess it was a bus, they called it a trolley. So we're not doing that one. For a while there was one of those pedal boats around, and we paired up with them. I'm all about trying to work with the other attractions in town, trying to offer the people who live here as well as guests coming to the city new and different experiences. So we have different things in the works a lot.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I thought was really cool when I was researching on your website and stuff is that when you do the haunted tour, it's not just a haunted tour, it's more like a ghost hunt, like you were saying.
Well, that's our hunt. We have two things. We have the ghost tour and we have the ghost hunt. The hunt is the investigation that's more like the, what you see on television with all the equipment. So, and that one's ages 18 and up. So it's an option for people who are more adventurous, who are looking to actually have an experience rather than just hear about the stories and the history. And it also is an option where people who want to do something without any kids around, have a choice to be able to do that. Typically our tour is for all ages, but right before we had to shut down for a little while because of the whole COVID thing, we had a real problem with younger kids not being able to follow social distancing, running right up to people. So for right now, we're saying, it has to be ages 13 and up for the tour unless they call me ahead of time and assure me that their kids can and they will make them follow social distancing. And, so sometimes we make some exceptions on that on a case by case basis. But yeah, so we try to offer stuff for families as well as stuff for people who are just, looking for an adults only activity. My experience has been that more often than not, women tend to book the tour and guys are more interested in doing the hunt. But the flip side of that is that if you have a couple, the one who's the most scared is almost always the guy.
So. And y'all have won so many awards for your tours, from USA Today to Country Living Magazine, Good Morning America, ABC News,
TripAdvisor's Top 10 Ghost Tours. Yeah, we've won a lot. I have fabulous guides, and I insist that they be able to be entertaining as well as know what they're talking about. And usually it takes us several months to get a new guide ready to do a tour. And that's what, that and the fact that we do have a lot of people get a lot of ghost pictures on our tour. People really like that. That's what I think accounts, the most for why we've been as popular as we are. But we're really grateful to all our guests for that.
And then you also have another book, which I researched a little bit, and it's kind of a mix between the paranormal and true crime, called the Corpsewood Manor Murders.
Yeah, and the paranormal stuff is all reported and true. That's not fictional stuff I've put in there just to make it more interesting. Yeah, like I said, I practiced law for 20 years, and then I retired and started the ghost tour. Well, when I first came up to this area in the 80s, people were talking about this, this case, the Corpsewood case. It made international news at the time that it happened, and it's had a cult following ever since that's just gotten bigger and bigger. If you Google the word Corpsewood, you'll come up with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of results, and every one of them has to do with this case.
Wow.
And then when I started the ghost tour, I started hearing about it from an entirely different angle. So it was like the perfect book to write, because I got it from both sides. But yeah, basically there was a couple of gay men from Chicago that one of them was a professor of pharmacology at Loyola and also the co-director of the Institute for the Study of Mind, Drugs, and Behavior. So, you can guess what kind of research they were doing. Well, they got fed up with the rat race, and he quit the university on his 50th birthday. They sold the mansion, sent a house full of Renaissance-era furniture down to the tiny town of Tryon, Georgia, where it sat in the middle of the national forest covered in tarps for a year while they built themselves by hand a castle in the middle of the national forest. They had loaded up the truck with 2 huge mastiffs, 2 human skulls, and 12,000 doses of LSD, and they were supposed to throw some great parties. Well, a couple of their guests decided, here's these 2 quarters in the middle of the forest where nobody can hear them scream. They'd be easy pickings. And they wound up robbing and murdering them. They thought, because here's these guys who didn't, work for someone else, whatever. They were living off the land and, built themselves a castle or whatever. So they thought, well, these guys must be rich. Well, as it turns out, they kept all their money in the bank. I mean, they would literally write a check to buy an Eskimo pie, an ice cream bar. So they got like a bag of nickels and dimes, and they did get a jeweled sword, and they stole the Jeep and like a leather jacket, but they didn't really get very much for having killed a couple of men. But, just the concept is mind blowing that they would do what they did, the awful things that they did for anything, but especially for something like that. Ever since the murders, there have been rumors about ghosts and curses and strange creatures and things like that around there. So that's it was a lot of fun to write about, and I got to go out there a couple of times. It's privately owned, but I've gotten permission from the owner to go out there before, and it's really a beautiful piece of property.
Yeah, that's just I would tell everybody to pick up your book because it's just an interesting story.
Thanks. Well, I tell people it really is the most bizarre true crime you'll ever hear. So everything from LSD to the Church of Satan to hand-built castle in the middle of the National Forest, anything weird you can think of, it's in there, and it's all true.
Do y'all have any upcoming special events with the tour company or with the Corpsewood Manor?
Well, no, I got permission at one point from the owner of Corpsewood to do a one-time event, bring a small van load of people. It's not to get there. You can't bring a bus in or whatever. It's dirt roads and tiny rough roads, whatever. But to do something special for a one-time basis, and then the company that I was talking about providing the transportation kind of fell apart, so we never got to do that. I'm hopeful that sometime in the future that we'll be able to do that, because I know there are a lot of people that are really, really curious about it. But it's also something where, he tells people not to come without permission, and if we did it this way, we could make sure that they were respectful and didn't do anything disrespectful or litter or anything to harm the land. There have been people out there that have, desecrated it some, and there's lots of graffiti and the remains of the castle, the manor, after it was burnt, which the rumor's always been that it was a group of ministers that did that. It didn't really get investigated. But, people have taken bricks. It kind of got to be a thing. I think probably started with teenagers or whatever about, taking a souvenir brick from Corpsewood. But then all these people that had done that, bad things started happening to them. So there's a big pile of bricks that people have brought back. So that's, we of course would not, I always tell people, don't take even if you find a penny on the ground, don't take anything from Corpsewood. Just bring your respect, take photos, but nothing else.
Yeah, and that's similar. There's the Bell Witch Cave in Adams, Tennessee. People have had a similar experience of taking rocks out of the cave and then sending them back because stuff started happening to them after they took them. And they never had paranormal stuff in their house before, or bad things happened in their house. And when they took a rock from that cave, they started having bad things happen. So they send them back. And every year they get so many of them back in the mail. And it just could be just a pebble. But the people are like, I don't want this, put it back in the cave where it belongs.
Right. Yeah, I've been to the Bell Witch Cave, but we didn't take anything other than pictures there. That's funny that you would say what you did, though. I had one time, and it's the only time I've ever done this, had this lady that said, I have these pictures from my house, all these, weird things have been happening or whatever. And some of it sounded like bad things. I should have known better than to do this. She said, but can I give you my disc, from the camera, my SD card, and you take a look at the pictures? I should never have taken that thing. I had all kinds of horrible things happen after I did that. I mean, I wiped off every picture off the computers and everything. And my dog, who is a great dog, she never chews up anything. She got hold of that SD card and chewed it up. And it was up where she couldn't even reach. She's a tiny dog, it was like up on a table where she couldn't even get it. I have no idea how she got it still.
Wow.
But yeah, you got to be really careful about things that you bring into your home. That's never a good idea. If you've looked on our website on the Ghostly Encounters page, there's one story. I'm not going to tell it to you right now because every time I tell it, something bad happens, so I don't tell it anymore. But if you go to the Ghostly Encounters about something that I took into the shop before, our building fell down 2.5 days later. I mean, that's pretty dramatic result.
Wow.
You can read about it on there. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And your website is ChattanoogaGhostTours.com, and people can
ChattanoogaGhostTours.com. That's right. People can buy tickets to the tour there. As far as the book, if anybody wants to pick up the book, both my books are available pretty much anywhere you can get books. Local bookstores here in Chattanooga carry them, but you can also buy them any place online that they sell books, from Amazon or Barnes & Noble to some of the, like Libris or even Walmart.com, iTunes, or Google Play. You can get them any of those places. So.
And on your Chattanooga Ghost Tours Facebook page, there's some really neat videos from some of your guides telling some of the stories that people can check out. Right.
We've had a couple times where you have some video from where we use some of the equipment. Like we have on our ultimate hunt, we'll use the SLS X-Cam, which used to be the only people that had that was Ghost Adventures, but the Digital Dowsing who built it for them sold a few to their old customers, and we got one then, and we had it's the only time we've ever filmed inside room 311 of the breed house, and we got some incredible results of that. So a couple other videos like that.
Awesome. And do you have any other book projects coming up?
I have about five different books that have been dancing around in my head. And I've had a lot going on personally in the last couple of years, so I haven't written them. But it is my full intention to. One of them is a like a historical fiction thriller type thing. One of them is sort of a sequel to the Corpsewood book. When I first wrote the book, I had a lot in there because that area, Tryon is a town of like 1,700 people, and they have had an incredible number of really bizarre murders and crimes associated with it. For youngest woman ever sentenced to death row for crimes was there in Tryon. Another really bizarre case, the bodies of the Corpsewood men cremated at Tri-State Crematorium, with the whole, or the 300 something bodies were found not cremated out there later. So I want to write one that's a follow-up about some of those other crimes, that because my publisher made me take all that stuff out. So I'm going to take some of that, the material I had written before, because I'd had people review the book before. I had to take that out, and that was some of their favorite stuff. So, at some point I'm going to write a sequel to that and cover some of those in more in depth. Thinking about maybe a haunted vacation guide, like for, if you want to have a haunted vacation, that kind of tourism is getting more popular, just about different states, the inns to go to and the restaurants to eat at and the, places to visit while you're there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I'd love any city I go to. One of my favorite ones that I've been to is Charleston, South Carolina, and
I went there for the first time earlier this year. We did the jail tour. Have you done that one?
I have, yeah. I've done a couple of their haunted tours, and yeah, it's the history is amazing. It's one of the oldest cities, but
it is. It's awesome.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
I would definitely check out a haunted vacation guide.
Yeah, there's a series of books that are like Weird Georgia and Weird New Jersey and Weird blah blah blah. Different states around, and I use those as travel guides. So, for a while in our old shop, the one that fell down, we had the Sugar Flat Road Creature Head in there for a while, which is a famous Bigfoot head, and I had first heard about it in one of the Weird Tennessee, and had driven an hour and a half to see it, and found that the shop was going out of business. So I contacted the owner and said, hey, let me talk to you about, renting or buying this head. And so we had that for a while too.
Well, I thank you for coming on today and doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. And, if you ever want to come as my guest on the tour, we'd love to see you.
Yeah, I would love to come down there and come on the tour. I like Chattanooga. Chattanooga is a really nice town. I've been to Raccoon Caverns before. I didn't know any of the haunted history about it, but I'll have to look more into that.
They don't tell their guests about it because they're afraid they'll scare them off. But if you ask about their ghost, they actually have a really nice ghost. His name is Willie, and he was the night guard. Some of the older people like me remember back when at Raccoon Mountain Caverns they had things like those little go-kart things, not called go-karts, but the ones that slide down a mountain. They're not motorized or anything like that. And they had several other things like that. And the reason that they all went away was they had a fire one night that destroyed a lot of things when Willie, the night guard, fell asleep with a cigar in his mouth. And so a lot of things burned down. Well, Willie, I guess, I don't know if he's remorseful for it or whatever, but he's still hanging around, kind of overseeing things, and people see him. They smell cigar smoke there a lot. And, yeah, so that's one of the friendlier ghosts in Chattanooga. That's one to check out.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Once again, I thank you, Amy, for coming on. And everybody go check out ChattanoogaGhostTours.com or look them up on Facebook and go to Chattanooga and check out one of their tours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time on The Unseen Paranormal. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at our website, unseenparanormalpodcast.wordpress.com. And don't forget to like, review, rate, and share with all your friends. Thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. Listen to our theme song and more of his music at chrislipsmusic.com. And remember, some of the scariest things are unseen.